Muted.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session, The Power Advisor, One-to-One Social Engagement. I am Jim Flynn, your host and moderator. Before we get started, I have a little bit of housekeeping. First, our next webcast will be June the 5th at 12 o'clock noon Central Time. We'll be joined by Kate Kasurik of Enviro. Kate will be talking about the service quality, table stakes, or untapped channel for growth. This will include the best practices for building, measuring, maintaining, and amplifying your organization's service quality and reputation, driven by research from Enviro's 2018 Insurance Industry Benchmark Study. If you've not yet registered for this year's IMCA Annual Conference and Showcase in Atlanta, Georgia, June 24th through the 26th, there's still time to register. Please see the IMCA website for more information and an exciting agenda. In fact, we're coming up on a deadline for the room block pricing on the 23rd of this month. Now I'd like to introduce today's presenter, Paulina Dudzinska, the Manager of Social Media Marketing and Communications at the Cooperators. As we all know, social media is becoming increasingly saturated and noisy. Cutting through the clutter and driving impact for a highly regulated industry presents additional challenges. Independent or captive insurance producers, carriers, MGAs, program managers, and all the others in this complex insurance distribution matrix continue to find social media daunting and often discouraging to fully delve into. However, with the appropriate guidance and compliance guardrails in place, a well-crafted and measurable approach can be off exponentially. As a seasoned social media expert, Paulina is experienced in delivering profitable, measurable solutions by designing sales programs to drive sales, retention, engagement among B2B and B2C clients in the financial services sector. As a reminder, a recorded version of this webinar will be available to IMCA members on the website in just a couple of days. Paulina is also going to be presenting a breakout session at the upcoming conference with more great content on this subject. So be sure to attend Paulina's session at the upcoming conference. Paulina, welcome to the IMCA microphone and to our webcast screen. And thank you so much for taking your valuable time to share your industry insights and success.
Hi there, I'm so thrilled to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you. You know, you've really talked about in our previous conversations how social media has become an important tool in your marketing program at the Cooperators. You know, so that our audience can better understand and relate to what you're going to be talking about and see how it might apply to what they're doing in their situation. Can you explain a little bit about the distribution model for the Cooperators and your geographic reach? Seems that we have a technical difficulty here. We've lost our presenter. So I apologize. As everything, it always works perfectly in the setup, but sometimes once we get going, we have a couple of technical difficulties. And it looks to me like she's going to be back with us here in just a moment.
Hi there.
All right, now we're back. Thank you very much.
We're back in business. I apologize about that. Just as I was about to go into my spiel, I'm sorry, everyone, for that disruption.
Hey, thank you so much. So you were just about to give us a little bit of insight into, how you're using social media, what parts of your distribution model that you're addressing, and also the geographic reach of the cooperators.
Sure. So the Cooperators is a leading Canadian diversified and integrated multi-line insurer. We're also a cooperative. So our company operates in three core areas: property and casualty, insurance, life insurance, and then investments. So as you can see, it is quite diversified. And we're also supported by close to 5,000 employees and a dedicated financial advisor network that spans nationally across Canada with over 2,000 licensed insurance representatives. So roughly 500 advisors and plus their agency staff. So we're very concentrated within Canada. That's our geographical reach and span, and where our clients reside as well.
And those are independent advisors as well as captive?
They're captive advisors.
They're captive advisors. Okay, yes. Great. Now, I know you're going to share some insider strategies with us for your social media success. But not everyone has had their social media as fine-tuned as your program is at the Cooperators. Can you share just one story with us of some of the early challenges that you met trying to leverage social media?
Yeah, finding one was difficult, and I'm definitely fully transparent about that, because when we started our journey with social media, really diving in 2011, it was daunting. We're a highly regulated industry. There's a lot of compliance guardrails. We started with our corporate presence because we knew we had to get our feet wet with that area, really understand what we were doing. Get the tough skin too, right? Because as soon as you go online, you have to be prepared for what's coming on at you regarding, the content you're posting, people's sentiment towards your products, your services, etc. And then what channels and where do you have your presence was another angle that we looked at quite strategically, and how would we diversify from there. And then at that level, once we figured that out, it was now providing guidance and support for our advisors and helping them really understand, where does social fit within my day, within my marketing and advertising mix at the local level, and what do my efforts equate in terms of ROI? Because at the end of the day, they're there to sell and build relationships, and social isn't always about selling. So navigating those murky waters was definitely a bit of a challenge for us, and helping to grow that comfort level throughout the years as we walk into, halfway through 2018 almost. Right.
Okay, well, that's very interesting. Well, I'll tell you what, let's get started here, but I just want to give a little bit of a background on the format for today's broadcast. We're going to take about the next 30 minutes or so to do a top line on the topic here. Then we're going to take a really quick break, and we'll do a deeper dive for another 15 minutes, followed by a Q&A. As you have questions, there is a chat pane at the bottom of your screen. If you would add questions to that as we go, we will address them at the end, but please, as they come up, send them anytime. And Paulina, it's all yours.
Thank you. Okay, so the context in today's webinar is really designed to speak to both captive and independent advisors in a broader sense. And I will also be drawing on examples from the Cooperators as use cases to demonstrate, what were our learnings, what were our successes, and how can that help you push and pull what you want to integrate into your current social media offering or strategy, or even if you're just starting off, where to put that yardstick in so you can move forward and build upon success at a reasonable pace. So I also want to preface that I'll be using agents and advisors pretty interchangeably throughout the context of the conversation, so I don't want to confuse anyone. So now that that's out of the way, really looking at where we're at and the power of the local local social engagement of the advisor, where life was before it was relatively simple because there was two efficient marketing tools that advisors had at their disposal, calling and direct mail. But as you introduce more digital opportunities, especially social, best practices are evolving rapidly. And because technology is also moving so quickly and user behavior is changing constantly, so the world is quite complex for them at this point. They have access to multiple social networks, and becoming more aware of the specific benefits of these platforms is happening as well, but they're also becoming more aware of the nuances of each channel, navigating through them. I think, as using Facebook as an example, that platform can change from day to day. So one thing that was successful yesterday might not even be available for you today. So how do you pivot through that? I think that can definitely be challenging because they're busy. Advisors are busy managing relationships, managing one-to-one interactions. So they have to look at social as an opportunity to integrate without siloing it out. And also because those advisors who are using social passively or not at all are definitely missing out on opportunities and on client acquisition. Executing an effective social media strategy requires a lot more than a do-it-yourself approach at this point in the game when we look at 2018. So realistically, looking at the slide, there's a couple of interesting stats here. Consumers are craving informative, entertaining, and delightful content. It has to be bundled neatly in a way that speaks to them, is driving value, and delivering the brand experience. And without a doubt, people are absolutely consuming content and using social media services or engaging with brand pages and making those recommendations to their peers. So we're no longer operating in that one-dimensional sales and service channel or model. There's nearly 80 billion messages sent worldwide daily. So customers' expectations have shifted dramatically and they've evolved. They're looking for non-friction channels, which means there's a seamless interaction without any disruption. Whether I call you, I type a post to you on Facebook, private or public, or I'm emailing you, I want the same level of service. And that's something that we really need to hone in on and pay attention to. And we know clients live day in, day out in their social media apps. So going back to the comment I just made about passively using social or not at all yet because of fear, compliance, or not being able to manage it, it's no longer an opportunity for advisors or the FinServe industry. And in the old world, the advisor-client relationship was definitely more linear. It was, look into your phone book, call the advisor, visit the office, bind your policy, move forward. It's no longer like that. Today, clients have a lot of choice in how they want to engage. It's a very client-driven model, and convenience is at the helm for them, and that's a critical aspect to consider. The sales and relationship building ecosystem for advisors has also significantly changed, and we really need to adapt and provide our producers with tools and technology that enable them to maintain and remain competitive and also connect with consumers in today's multifaceted environment. That's definitely a critical space. So that brings us into who is the multi-channel consumer, whether it's you and I or the people we're trying to target. They are time-starved. They want convenience and flexibility, and that's extremely critical. If you look at your day-to-day life, whether you're working, no longer working probably your 9-to-5 job, the hours have changed and the demands have changed. You've got family environments, you want to consume some content online. Like, that content really has to speak to you to make a difference. And they're also very value conscious, these consumers. There's ample information and choice at their fingertips. Knowing that they're receiving value is fundamental, or they'll completely ignore and isolate you as the brand or the thought leader that's delivering the content. They're tech savvy, and sorry about that, I skipped some points. They're also tech savvy, meaning that, I think we believe that being tech savvy was a Gen Y nature of engaging online or through social, but it's actually all generations at this point. It really transcends through everybody. Everyone's comfortable, and the gaps of adoption through technology and digital channels are closing in quickly. They're also quite empowered. Clients do have that choice, and they decide how, when, and who they do business with. So taking a look at this ecosystem of this omni-channel consumer, you know, it's absolutely critical that these factors are considered, because increasing numbers of digital touch points are available, and the ability to engage with a brand at the corporate or local level instantaneously and through the touch of a button gives consumers much more option and higher expectations in how they engage and what they want to receive. So that's had a major impact on the client journey and how consumers expect brands to deliver on the promise and also the experience. And that's a really interesting term has been coined. It's the expectation economy, where consumers have a very high list of expectations they apply to each interaction, big or small, with any brand of size, or the experience they have, because, you know, brands like Google or Amazon, they've fine-tuned their approach on how they've streamlined all these cornerstones of what the omni-channel consumer is that it's now transcending into financial services. How do I get personalized advice? How do I interact with this brand or this financial advisor? This is all coming down the pipes to our industry, and it's really given the influx of digital information access to multiple devices that clients and consumers are becoming much more selective about what messages they pay attention to and how they engage. So really, in a nutshell, digital experiences are creating more informed, self-directed consumers who rely less and less on traditional sources of advice, and that once would take up a lot of the face-to-face interaction. Before they even walk into that face-to-face, they know a heck of a lot about you, about your business, about your agency, what your culture is about. So those factors are critical. And without that connection before even the face-to-face happens, that's quite a missed opportunity from the advisor perspective. So that brings us to, you know, who the financial advisor is, or the financial agent at this point. And the quote I really like is the one in the blue: is business is business, but advice is personal. And, you know, just what we talked about the different touch points in digital and then the final face-to-face, touch points on digital can still be personal and personalized. And I think that's what we want to get to by the end of this webinar, is really walk through how can we use social to its, you know, core benefit. Today's financial service industry is rapidly changing, just like everything else. And the new digital technologies, social, mobile, analytics, cloud, they're really creating fundamental shifts for both the client and the advisor, attitudes, behaviors, and relationships. And as younger investors mature and wealth passes from one generation to another, digitally empowered consumers and other do-it-yourselfers really will seek out financially relevant information and advice through multiple channels. And I think that's super important here, because this is the new reality for advisors, and those who fail to embrace these challenges or at the brand level are not supported to help face these challenges will find it very difficult to sustain and maintain that competitiveness or even that top of line awareness. And the industry has really reached a new tipping point with digital at its core. Today's advisors are the advisors of the future, and they will face those fundamental challenges. But it will also usher in a very new era of financial planning. These shifts are lasting, and they're definitely expected not only to transform the FinServe industry, but also provide and lead the way to new, more trusting client relationships, enhanced experiences, and more committed financial advisors. And that will reinforce the need for ongoing advice. So realistically, you know, this brings us to the cornerstone of how do you stay relevant in a very changing world. And all the red points on this slide, I think, signal to how complex it is to be a financial advisor or an insurance agent. When you walk into the social media space, there's a lot for you to consider. Plus, you also have your day job. So, you know, even considering things like compliance and legislation, can I post this comment, respond to this message in this way? How do I drive engagement? And, you know, through what's content that I can use? What will my brand or the corporate firm allow me to post versus if I'm a captive agent? does this even meet the needs of the products that I'm brokering for? So, digital will continue to play an important piece of this puzzle, because it's definitely not going away. This is where behavior is shifting, and strong customer relationships will remain paramount. So companies or even independent advisors that create a clear vision and strategy that enable their producers or their staff to really embrace these opportunities and technologies by integrating social, will definitely continue to meet the demands of the new era head on. It's not going to be smooth sailing. I don't believe, as with, as quickly as technology changes or things end up increasing or going away. It's about being flexible and agile in this ever-changing environment. However, looking at this, even if you have all these components set on and you're moving forward, being engaged through social is much easier said than done. And I'm sure that those who are on this webinar can appreciate that. You've met your own headwinds. We definitely have at the cooperators, as I mentioned, that it's been growing pains at times, and figuring out, testing and tweaking and optimizing and having some oops moments too. It's not as cut and dry as a direct mail piece used to be, or putting out a print ad used to be. These channels, social as a whole, is a living, breathing organism. So they need to be fed accordingly within brand appropriate styles, but also without having the silo approach. And then promotion beyond, organic content. So there's a lot of factors happening here. So I think, the next few slides, whether you're a captive or independent advisor, the channels and the opportunities are quite similar, but so are the challenges. So I'm hoping that you'll find some of the use cases that I've brought forward quite applicable to you, or opportunity to integrate into your own business. So this slide will definitely set the tone for the next few discussion points, and it's about really looking at social from a strategic perspective. And I think a lot of the time, or at least before, people would just jump on social because they knew they needed to, or it was the hip new thing on the block, and let's pick random channels because they look interesting and they might be fun and we could do some interesting, neat things on them. But really, social is no different than any other core communication or marketing approach. Whether it was done, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, there's still applicable strategic areas of focus that have to or should be adhered to get the maximum approach and value. And the inside out approach is really interesting, because what it does is it looks at what can we do for the market versus what can the market do for us. So how is your value prop perceived? Is it superior? Is it lagging? What does that state in terms of what the client wants versus we need to go on social because we can get some sales from it? How and why are your needs, the needs of your clients changing? And I think really focusing on the client first and foremost will help you streamline and hone in if your current social strategy is applicable, or if it needs revamping, or if you haven't started, where do you need to start first? A good example of this would be, we need to be on social. Let's pick Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, this, that, and the third. I think that approach is almost like throwing a dart against a wall, because you're doing a spray and pray approach. But when you look at it from the outside in, where are your clients and where are your core audiences that you want to grow and do business with? If it's only Twitter, well, that's where you would put your resources into. So that's a quick example of looking at it from the outside in. It's also about what the needs of the clients are that we can drive value for. So is there specific content types that they're interested in? Is there specific engagement tools that they're interested in? Maybe your audience is based on gamification trends. So how can we weave that into our strategy? And how can we anticipate what also our competitors are going to be doing? What are they lurking around the corner with a new and innovative idea that might sway our target audience over to them? how does that essentially fit into your brand, whether it's at the corporate macro level or down to your micro environment where your advisors are? And really, what can we deliver to our clients as we move through that, and how does that create us to be a leader in the market? So redefining what the sales funnel looks like in terms of performance for the industry, and can we reshape the customer purchase criteria? So a sound social media strategy should focus on various types of your organization to achieve, sustain, and drive profit from customer value at the end of the day. So if we had to underscore anything, it would be, how can we deliver customer value through social? So hopefully that sets a little bit of the tone for the next few slides, because that's what we've really looked at the cooperators, is how are our audience going to respond? What is it that we want to, and how is it that we want to engage with our audiences? How does our brand fit in the mix? How do our captive advisors fit into this mix as well, and their local communities? And what are the differentiating points that we'll want to provide or hone in on through social engagement? So before I pause for a moment, I'm going to pass this off to Jim, but I definitely want to preface that a lot of these steps that I'll walk you through in a moment are means to differentiate through social and leverage the power of the advisor at the one-to-one local level, which is quite difficult. You know, from corporate, there's a lot more resources. There's a lot more skill specialization. So how does that channel down to provide advisors the right tools that they need to deliver value through social? And each of the case examples and case studies applies this concept at a broader level. So hopefully you'll see some value through the examples I'm going to be walking through too.
Outstanding. This is really interesting, and I know that a lot of people that we have talked with, they often have challenges in how to get their independent or their captive agents engaged, involved, and really work with them on a one-to-one basis. So looking forward to some examples and a little bit deeper dive. So as a reminder, we're going to take another 15 minutes or so, do a deeper dive on particular tactics that that Paulina can share with us that are having success with the cooperators, and then we'll also be doing a Q&A at the end of that. So again, the questions panel at the bottom of your control panel, you'll see that chat screen down there. So please share some questions with us. I've seen a couple pop in there already, and just want to make sure that you remember our next webinar is coming up on June the 5th, and it's going to be a really interesting program on service quality. So looking forward to that. And of course, if you have not attended or haven't registered yet, please register for the upcoming IMCA annual conference and showcase in Atlanta, Georgia, coming up next month on June the 24th through the 26th. There's still some time to register, so look forward to seeing all of you there. And Paulina, please take us on the rest of the deeper dive.
Wonderful. So thank you for that. We'll definitely be getting into the nitty-gritty at this point. That was more of a high-level overview and setting the tone for the strategy. But strategy is one thing. You know, I think everyone can, a lot of people actually can write a very great, succinct strategy, but without the actual execution to that, it's difficult to validate whether something's working or not. So I'll walk you through what we've done and how we've delivered the strategy and the integration, both at the corporate level and how it meshes into the producer side of things. And we definitely look at the strategy as an integrated approach, right? So when we think social at the cooperators, it's not just social corporate, what we do there, and then social advisors. It's how are we maximizing both levers to get the most exposure from engagement, ROI attribution, and maximum business value at the end of the day. So we started with creating value. So how will your advisors really deliver value through social? And some of the things that have worked for us is really looking at creating value by providing trusted advice. So knowing the client and supporting long-term relationships with the client through social interactions. People, like I said, people live in these apps, so they may not see your print ad or your DM piece or whatever other side of the marketing mix you're trying to push forward, but where you can keep that top of mind is through the content that is pushed out through social, because they're constantly spending time in their newsfeed digesting content, engaging with brands, engaging with their peers, and there's a lot of nitty-gritty tactics that can accompany that, but really you're providing trusted advice. That is their job at the FinServe level, to give that trusted advice for products that are quite complex in nature. And that leads into also providing value through innovative and competitive insurance solutions and looking at additional self-serve options for a seamless experience. So you might have posted a quick article through social that drives someone to investigate deeper into the context of the article or the loss prevention piece, whatever it be, but you're connecting the thread through that content piece and other options on your digital roadmap. And then convenience as choice is another critical aspect to creating value, because like I mentioned in earlier parts of this discussion, what we do at the insurance level is now being really framed by the consumer choices. So our ability to adapt here and ensure that we're delivering convenience and choice and giving consumers a voice in the business through non-friction channels like social media is absolutely pivotal to creating that value. And then walking into enhancing the value, it's through things like ways to highlighting products and services, benefits, demonstrating your brand difference, through top of mind, consistent, and real-time interactions. And then clearly consumer education and credible expertise when you're interacting with your client through social media channels is monumental. I think, the last thing you want to do is put out something, a piece of content or a piece of advice that's stale or inaccurate, because that one moment of truth where it could be disrupted by false information or inaccuracy could diminish that potential prospect or client to further do business with the brand. So that leads us into a new and engaging way of communicating and also sharing that valuable information, because you want to maintain and nurture those relationships, whether they're just a prospect or they're an ongoing client. Looking at it from an ongoing client perspective, a client review once a year is a lot of time in between when your financial advisor, your insurance advisor, or even the brand has done business with that client or had an opportunity for a face-to-face conversation. So using social to keep that top of mind as they move through life stages and possibly that 12-month span, or if they've gotten married or had a baby, those moments of interaction through digital channels will keep your brand more alive and top of mind as they consider new products and how you can help them provide financial security for their needs. And then obviously safeguarding value is one of the last points that was the cornerstone of our strategy, and that's loss prevention. When you think about buying an insurance policy, you buy it for when you need it most. You don't physically, tangibly touch it. So loss prevention in the interim to mitigate that claims experience or to enhance that claims experience to be better is critical, and that's why these channels are fantastic to sending out that real-time information. And obviously, state-of-the-art claims handling, and you'll see me or hear me discuss this in a moment during one of our use cases when I talk about social customer care service. That's critical during where we are at now, where people have their phones at the end of their palms pretty much at all times of the day. They, if there's anything happening in their home that they can't access, like a regular computer, or they can't get to an agency or a financial advisor, they can interact through social, and it's so critical to have that opportunity to provide that customer care service through loss prevention. And also another way to provide peace of mind, asset protection, and sense of security through the conversations you're driving on these channels. I think the big thing too is bridging gaps and breaking down silos. And that's a pretty quick statement to make. It's much easier to say than actually do and facilitate. And I hope that some of you can appreciate that comment. Social, like I said before, I think it was just a thing that people knew they had to do, but it wasn't fully integrated into the rest of the organization or the business. So how does it connect with your CRM? How does it connect with your website, with your creative team, with your manufacturing or operations? Because all those pieces have to fit the mold in order to use social at its fullest. For example, with the customer care service point, if a claims situation happens and your claims department isn't speaking with your social media department or your marketing department, how can the best piece of advice be provided back to the client in a timely fashion? So processes and formats have to be created as you're going through your social media care strategy. So once you do go live or you're revamping what you currently have, they all mesh together. And then obviously integrating between online and offline activities, I think that's also very critical, because a lot of times what people will do is, what we've seen is, if they have a challenge, they would have called the agency or corporate office. Maybe they weren't exactly satisfied with that solution. They'll hit us back up online through social channels. So we need to know what's happening on the offline conversations versus how we're managing online. And, if there's a situation that's happening or percolating in the offline environment, let's say there's a wildfire that we know that's happening or imminent to happen somewhere in our western part of the country, then going out with a piece of content that could be contradictory to this environment, or that could not be the most sensible, could also prove a situation for us. So looking at social from a very collective, integrated approach is very critical. And that's where we've found a lot of, the road bumps we've encountered. And when we say road bumps or learning, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It just helps us enhance and provide a better client experience to our audiences as we look at those situations and pivot from them to enhance where we're at. So the strategy itself, or the vision, should provide you a direction, but as you begin to execute and tactically roll out what you need to achieve, there should and must be some flexibility to help you deliver on that. So looking at the first use case example, I want to walk you through what we've done for our advisors at the local level using a social media management program. So this was really interesting, like I said, because we took our examples from what we did corporately, and we knew the need for advisors to be present on social was critical. They also had to grow their audiences and engage in a sustainable, compliant, on-brand way. So our internal corporate strategy was our yardstick. And from there, we started to delineate down to the advisors, and we planned that in phases. We also understood that our users, being the advisor for our social media program, we had to understand their pain points. What were they facing when considering social media that could have been more friction? What were the challenges that they were fearful of before diving into this space? So we handpicked those as well and had a lot of internal conversations with them. We talked with people who were tech savvy, digitally savvy at the agency level, those who were middle of the road, but also those who were complete laggards and not very keen on looking or participating in social media as part of their agency marketing and communication mix. And we really honed in on those discussions, because as we went to our stakeholders, and the advisors being one, we wanted to ensure that we were getting the best buy-in possible for our recommendation of a nationwide social media program. And from that, as we had those conversations and we're able to build out this strategy, we're also doing our vendor homework. So for transparency and for those who are interested, we use Hearsay Social, which I know is a pretty substantial solutions provider, SaaS solutions provider for the FinServe industry. We've had a lot of success with them, but we did a lot of homework around what are the long-term integration capabilities? Can we move beyond social, and how do they evolve? What type of leads are we going to be able to pull from this management program for our advisors because we know we have to provide business value to them beyond just engagements, likes, shares, and the third. So that was another component, is how can you succinctly capture the leads so they can grow their business through social media? Also, can we streamline our processes? To be completely honest, when we started Social for Advisors before the management program we brought in, we were providing them with a spreadsheet of content where they would have to copy and paste the piece of content, source their own photo, and use the link we provided. So it was very rudimentary, very manual, intense, heavy, and there was no way possibly that we could have asked them to go search through the news feed and, based on your connection, see if there's a lead opportunity, like let's say someone's birthday or somebody just got married. It's almost like a needle in a haystack, right? So when we looked at our vendors, there had to be some core criteria that they could provide to us from corporate administrator level to down to the benefit to the user. It had to be easy for them to use, the opportunity to grow and enhance and drive that value for them from the sales side. And then lastly, what does the vendor's longevity look like? So we really focused in on how long has this vendor been in market? What are their clients? Are there substantial? Is there possibility that they might be acquired or bought out, which would change our relationship and our structure? So it did definitely take us some time, and we were okay with the amount of time it was taking for us to build out the advisor strategy and select the vendor through an RFP process. And as I mentioned, the end user, being the advisor, was at the core of our decision-making process, because if we at the corporate level just came out strong and said, you know what, we believe this vendor with this capability is the best use case, we're also not the ones using it. So that would have been a massive miss, and the adoption, I think, would have been significantly impacted. So whether you're devising a program for your captive agents, or you're interested in this content from an independent agent perspective, these all apply in the sense that, as you're picking a tool to streamline posting or engagement or managing at the corporate level your advisors through social, a lot of this vendor approach, these vendor approaches make sense for you, just to ensure that you're making the most sensible decision for the long term. These programs are expensive. They take a lot of time to operationalize. They're expensive to purchase. So you always want to make the right decision for a variety of needs. And the other success point that we found when we launched our social media management program was communication was extremely key to the adoption and the preparation for our end users, being the advisors. So we communicated early. We communicated with district managers. We communicated with senior level executives around the goal of the program long term, where the phases we're going to roll out, and looking at it from often and pulsating communication strategies as well. So it was top of mind of what was coming, how you were going to interact, etc. Then we also truncated down to resources. So we know our advisors, there's three pillars of them: those who are tech savvy, middle of the road, and laggards. How will our resources to them to support the rollout and adoption and use of this program make sense? So we considered multiple formats like live sessions. We traveled across Canada to teach and inform hands-on. We had documents and PDFs created, and also we produced recorded webinars, so advisors and their staff could also reference this on the fly. We prepared content before we even went out live, and as you see on the second portion of the screen, last year we had over 800 pieces of content available. So that didn't start right off the hop. We consistently add more content and retire things as we go, to make sure that we can satisfy the need of being authentic, valuable, thought leader driven, etc. And we soft launched the program. So we rolled out it in stages. As I mentioned, we have close to 500 agencies across Canada, lots of staff across those agencies. In order to manage it from the corporate side even, so we could do this succinctly and methodically, we selected districts and we rolled it out based on stages of districts and training sessions, and allowed people to sign up for things based on their time and availability. We also understood that their advisors and our advisors and staff are busy, so we gave them some options that they could register for. And naturally, we're monitoring and measuring, which as part of any strategy is critical. What's working, what's not, where can we tighten up the reins, where do we need to tighten them, loosen them up, in terms of compliance. The program we use is based on lexicon, so we can capture glaring content that our advisors also post on their own and help coach and educate them. So there's a few facets there that we look into when we monitor and measure. And then we optimize. So we've rolled out new enhancements to our social media program, such as native video through Facebook. We upload campaigns where they can schedule a string of campaigns or content succinctly without having to remember to always go in and post. Again, the tool that we're using in the vendor enables us to do that. But even from the independent advisor side, there's opportunities to look into scheduling programs that you can delegate to staff. Hootsuite's one of them. There's Social Studio. There's a variety of free programs as well that allow you to really streamline, so social media isn't taking over someone's job entirely. And then we look at enhancing. So going forward, what are some more one-to-one engagement tools that we can do over the long haul? Is it texting? Is it websites, etc.? So we're constantly on the lookout for more one-to-one engagement formats that are trending, that our audiences want, and that our advisors will need as tools to continue on maturing our social media presence. So this chart over here shows you kind of where we started. Level 1 into level 4 would be the trajectory and journey where we were heading. Market leading, I think, is where our yardstick was to go, but we definitely didn't expect an overnight solution there. So we're kind of hovering between level 3 and 4 and slowly inching towards that end of a full-scale solution for advisors beyond just social. And some of the success points we've had is we launched at the end of 2016 with our social media management program. We have over 663 users, content's being added for them on the fly. Each week we have a few pieces and we schedule and retire as we need. And last year we had over 50,000 publishes of content from our advisors in their respective channels on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, which was significant because while we provide them with a content library, they also have the ability to post their own content, which we encourage because social is a conversation. So we've had that success there, but we also have that safety net of the tool we're using through Hearsay to catch those glaring comments or maybe publishes that could impact the brand or their reputation at the local level. We now are accountable for over 220,000 local connections from our advisors, which is demonstrating the power of the one-to-one local. So each advisor has a niche audience, whether it be Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn, and they're curating and nurturing that relationship through valuable content. We also have captured over 2,700 leads. So those are money in motion moments, whether someone has a birthday, changes a job, career change, last name change, meaning they got married, location change. Those are all emotional moments that to an advisor looking at it from life, wealth, P&C, property or casualty, you can identify that, someone's changed something in their life. Then might be a good idea to just send them a quick congrats or just start a warm lead conversation like, oh, noticed you made a change to your job. Have you considered life and wealth at this point? Maybe that's a different income bracket. Like those are examples of the leads that are coming through the system now that our advisors can capitalize on and turn that into ROI attribution. And then over 91,000, close to 100,000 engagements, so likes, shares, and comments that we've been able to capture as a result of our advisors posting. So this is pretty fundamental and monumental for us when we look at the impact. And I guess what I'm trying to get at too is without a proper tool or a fundamental strategy, we wouldn't be very clear on how efficient social media is for a business at the cooperators. So in terms of content, I touched a little bit on this. This is really important too, because social at the end of the day is just a conversation behind a computer screen. So, as a face-to-face conversation, if you're monotone, if you're, completely uninteresting or you're totally driving a different conversation than your audience is, you're going to lose that connection. So having the right mix of content through client touch points like social is critical. And what does that really look like? It's about balance between lifestyle content versus corporate and industry, and playing within the nuances of the channels. So posting the same piece of content on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, I mean, you could absolutely do that, but those channels are very different. They're very unique, and ones appreciate hashtags, ones appreciate short, truncated content, another one could be more long-tailed. So understanding how your content fits and how that channel down to your advisors is that much more critical to help them succeed in this space of driving conversation. So just being conscious of time, I'm just going to speed through a little bit of this, but the second use case is, does the 70-20 10 rule apply? And I think in general, social media publishing recommendations for years have been that 70% of your content should be lifestyle, 20 should be industry, and 10 should be corporate. Does that always apply? I think the answer is really it depends, because it depends on where your audience is and what you're trying to achieve through social. And that really goes back to bridging the strategy to the content. For example, if you're in life and wealth, then focusing on real-time trusted advice, reputable third-party sources, and building thought leadership is going to be critical for you. So that's going to drive more of that industry type of content as well. It has to be current, and it has to be accurate to drive that relationship between your clients, because they want real-time insight to believe that you're the trusted advisor. While life and wealth insurance tips, it's more about the evergreen content, topics of mutual interest, less jargon, because life insurance is a very complex product. It's money and kids, millennials and money, topics that are very much trending that people find value in, because they don't have a lot of that insight when they consider life insurance, or when they even have a policy. So ongoing education is paramount in this way, and that also leads to referrals and discussions around more products and services when you get that client face to face. So really, it's more the top funnel, and you're pulling them down to get them into the agency or your firm or your office to have that in-depth conversation. And then P&C insurance content tips are a little different, because this is property and casualty is more of a commoditized range of products. So more seasonal content, using branded content. If there's, a competitive rate on your auto insurance or your home insurance that you want to profile, those are wonderful to help your audiences, your advisors' audiences, really draw that connection and become sticky with the content, so you can nurture them down into binding a policy or learning more about the product. And when I mention hotspots, those are things that are percolating in the industry, or those are relevant to your audiences. A non-strategic hotspot would be, Mother's Day or Father's Day. You want to plug that in, so you're injecting yourself into the conversation of your audiences that's already happening. Strategic natured hotspots are things that are around the industry or your brand. Let's say that there are rate reductions in your area, or you've added an enhancement to your property product that will drive value. You'd want to inject that in there so it's topical and informative to your clients at that moment in time. And then I think lifestyle is a pretty generic term. It's authentic, personalized, and aspirational content, tasteful entertainment. I think humor with any conversation, whether it's happening face-to-face or online, is important, because it draws people's attention, but tasteful to the brand. Are the brand attributes there, and are they maintained within a level of comfort that whether you're an independent advisor running your brokerage or your agency, or you're posting content on behalf of a large-scale financial brand, does that align with who you are and what you want to put out to your clients on a consistent basis? Tips or open-ended questions, polls are wonderful. You can draw a lot of market research from those opportunities of how people engage with you, to also not only help drive more content development, but also how people feel about your business and what you should anticipate. And really, it's about being conversational, removing the jargon, removing the complexity, and helping people in a very succinct 1 to 2 sentence way understand or learn more, or derive value from what you're saying is the cornerstone of the conversation and the content you're trying to deliver through social channels, or your advisors are. So really that goes back to the answer of, it depends on what the mix is. 70, 20, 10 might apply to you, or maybe it's a completely different ratio. But depending on who you're trying to reach in your conversation and your audiences, those will shift. So it's important to understand who you're speaking to and where you're speaking to them and about what topic to create your own wheel of ratio. And then social care, which is social customer service. This is really a strong differentiating point, not only for brands, but also for advisors. And if they can hone that in and deliver the same level of care and service that they do in traditional off-channel environments like their office or their agency or through phone or email, and take that into the conversation that's happening online, that's a big differentiator. And that's going to make the difference whether someone engages with your advisor or your competitors. People are using online social channels for real-time support. They don't want to wait on the phone. They have a question real time. They have their phone at the end of their palm. They're typing it in. They want the answer now. So how does social care connect? And when do you do one-to-one personalized service versus when do you provide a one-to-many model of service? So I'll walk you through how that works through one of our examples with a recent catastrophic event. But it's about also humanizing the client experience through their channel of choice. So it's really important that the interaction is consistent with who you are as a brand, whether it's a large-scale brand or the local level. For us, it's about being trusted, friendly, honest, helpful, and family-minded during any social interactions. Those are brand attributes. Also, capitalizing on the personality of your brand as well, or the person that's responding. And how do you do that within the compliance guardrails, which becomes a little bit more complex. So the third use case is about humanizing experiences. And I touched on a little bit of these already in the previous slide, but defining what your brand voice and tone is for not only your brand at the corporate level, but also your advisors. How does that channel down? And making sure that they also add their uniqueness to it. What are your response SLAs? So people, like I mentioned before, are now expecting very quick real-time responses in their interactions and help and support. So how will you commit to responding to clients, or how will your advisors commit to responding to them? Will it be within an hour? Will it be within 5 to 10 minutes? It's really about setting that service standard and not deviating unless you have to pivot because you found a more efficient way to do that. You will end up training your audience to engage with you on these channels, and they will learn to expect a certain time or service delivery experience. So that's why it's important to set some parameters as you develop how customer service through social will function. Channels of choice. So where do you want to be present, and where do your audiences interact the most? So if you want to focus in on Facebook being the channel where the conversations and the support is happening, then use the tools that Facebook provides for messenger interaction for customer service. And really, moment of truth and incident management is a big one, and that's really one of the examples that we have today is how we handled Fort McMurray wildfires in 2016. That was a significant catastrophic event for us. And we were able to handle over 300 customer service moments. We drove 3.8 impressions of our client content that we posted throughout about 3 to 5 weeks because we were posting resources as well as servicing questions that our clients were inquiring about. We had a triage process with our claims area, so things were moving swiftly. We engaged subject matter experts when questions became complex. And we were hoping for a three-way dialogue as well. So as we were talking to our audiences, they were talking back to us, and they were engaging with each other for support. And that's really the crux of an engagement strategy with social and the customer service side. And then we measured that back. How were we able to drive success through our social care strategy with regards to Fort Mac? Well, we know that we drove 3.8 million impressions, 62,000 clicks to our owned content on our website as a result. We also had some advertising running to broaden the reach. So there was quite a few effective ways that we were able to see, did our cost per click drive down? Were we able to handle the influx? Where would we then pivot to streamline for a new CAT event in the future? So I'm just got a notification. I'm running a little bit low on time, so I'm going to quickly skim through some of these next sections. Another area of part of your strategy and that your advisors would be looking for to see more value out of their social media is advertising. So it's a pay-to-play channel now, social, and you do essentially get a lot more bang for buck, but the channel-specific considerations have to be in play. And how will you promote the content? Is it value driven? Are you precision targeting? Are you open to providing your advisors the opportunity to advertise on their own? And through a sound strategy, you'll be able to identify where you want to advertise. Is there geographies that are more profitable? How does the content fit into this? And what are some of the objectives that you want to reach? When we look at the next use case, this is one example where we drove considerable results through a very targeted, precise strategy for localized advertising to our advisors. We selected advisors in Atlanta, Canada to promote our JD Power Award for auto insurance. As you can see, we created a succinct copy that focused on getting great rates in customer service in Stratford. We had unique creative that we rotated, but we also made it very personal by naming the advisor that someone would interact with in the actual description copy. So we significantly reduced our cost per click from the corporate ads down to the local ads. We had over 6,000 engagements and over 600 quote starts for our auto products. So we deemed that as quite successful, and we made significant headway in driving traffic to the localized advisor website. So that, I think, in a nutshell, demonstrates as well how you can be very effective when a social media is integrated into your strategy, because it touches multiple aspects of your business beyond just having a Facebook page. And that leads to actionable KPIs. So listening first and selling second, really seeing what's happening online with your audiences. How are they responding? You know, rather than going out there with a hard sales pitch, are you driving that value? Are you focusing on the money in motion moments? And how do you educate your advisors to look for those moments? And is possibly a tool or system in place to help them focus on those areas? And then rinsing, lathering, and repeating. I think you keep optimizing and going through the motions, and when you do that, that's great and you're moving forward, but really looking at the analytics and seeing, are things starting to break apart, is also important, because then you can course correct quite quickly with channels like social when they're more real time and actionable. And you really can't manage what you can't measure. So without having sound KPIs or benchmarks to work towards, it's going to be very difficult for your advisors to have faith in social, or even to action it from an independent advisor standpoint. And then really at the end of the day, how are you going to be different? You know, I think these really focus in on the fact that it doesn't always have to be about being first to the market to try something. Being later to the game means you can differentiate. You can see where your competitors have faltered or didn't have the best success in. How can you adapt that to where you are? And it's definitely about, you know, we know we're competing ferociously against each other to provide superiority, but sometimes we can innovate at providing an experience differently versus reinventing the wheel. So I think that's about it for time, and I'm going to pass it over to Jim.
Hey, thank you very much, Paulina. This was an incredibly deep dive. Thank you. We're running long, but because this is recorded and going to be redistributed, I'm going to go ahead. We've got 3 great questions here, so I want to pose those to you. But first, just want another reminder on the upcoming webinar on June 5th on service quality. Going to be a great one. And then also a reminder that there's still time to register for the upcoming conference and gala in Atlanta, Georgia on June 24th through the 26th. So we'll get to the questions here. What audiences, Paulina, can you be a little bit more specific on what audiences you use to interact with most specifically, or excuse me, most regularly?
So and with our strategy, we have 6 core audiences that we engage with, and those are clients and consumers. We have personas that we've bucketed them into, whether it be a millennial or a traditionalist or a boomer or, a Gen Xer. Those are our main clients, but we also have employees, media outlets, our member owners, other cooperatives. Fundamentally on social, we try to strive to drive value to those who are more on the policy level as well. So we precision target our content and our advertising that fits the life stage or the lifestyle of that persona. So if we're targeting a millennial per se, then we know the copy and the creative should mirror that of that individual, of what they're currently living through or the products that they would want to engage with or that they find as a priority. So that could be a life stage for auto and home insurance. Possibly there may be starting a family at this point. So a simplified life solution would be the case. And that's how we derive some of the success that we've been able to see. And that also channels down to our advisors as well. So we do help and educate them to use targeting through social channels. Our content through our management program is specifically bucketed by persona, so they know that if I send this message out about life insurance, this is going to hit my millennial audiences versus another message about life insurance that's drafted differently or has a different visual, is speaking to our boomer generation.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. I think it's fair to say that consumers have an almost cool relationship with the insurance provider that they might work with. What part of your strategy have you found most helpful in warming up that relationship?
Yeah, consistency for sure. I would say that when we looked at social media, we knew that we were going to be walking into those social care conversations, as I mentioned, or feedback in real time. Delivering a consistent experience is critical because with insurance, somebody could have had a great experience one day and that's their motivating factor to engage with us. Another, 4 years down the road, they could have a different one that's not so pleasant, and they'll tell you about that very quickly. So motivation factors are either polarizing on very happy and satisfied or very negative. So the consistency of our service delivery and how we handle with compassion, care, and the swift triaging of having a customer being followed up with is critical, but it's also consistency on content. And that's where we also try to educate our advisors is that, if you set up a channel, engage consistently with your audiences because you'll end up dropping off if you only post once a month. You're not going to be driving that value. It's going to be very hard for social channel algorithms to pick up your content when you're pretty stagnant on them for the remainder of the month or the year, etc. So that also works within the channel nuances. It works within engaging your audiences, especially if you only see a client once a year at a client review or you only talk to them on the phone. So that helps warm up those relationships as well. And I think going back to the accuracy and value-driven content and conversation that you're delivering, that also puts more faith from the client into the business and the advisor that they're either already engaged in or considering to engage in.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. And last question before we sign off. What topics have you found really to provoke the most interest among the people you're trying to build a relationship?
Yeah, so from the corporate level, quickly, it's definitely precision targeted content that applies to those that we want to engage in. So it's not that spray and pray approach. That is definitely not effective. Just like any traditional advertising wouldn't be effective if you're not really honing in to speak to the person you want to engage with. But it's lifestyle, it's the content that's more laissez-faire, it's using natural language speak, it's removing that jargon out of it, it's topical. We also see huge success with hotspot-driven content. So I'll give a quick example. Last year, if anyone knows about the Cooperators logo, if you're interested, look it up. The 3 C's that form our logo, which is co-ops, credit unions, and Canadian, they look like a fidget spinner. And people told us about this online, and we were like, oh, there's a trend percolating here. It involves our brand. It's a positive experience. We can educate people. So we worked with our creative services designers to create an animated GIF that showed our logo spinning like a fidget spinner. That blew up. People loved that. They were so excited about it because it was lifestyle, it was applicable. Fidget spinners were a huge trend. I don't know if they were in the States or not, but everyone was using them. Their children were using them. So we related our brand to that, and it just meshed and it worked. But it still delivered the fact that we educated about our brand, our roots, our history. So it's about injecting yourself into that style of conversation that's naturally forming around you. Even though your brand doesn't mean that you can't be human. I think that's also the cornerstone of the strategy that I was referring to. For advisors, beyond the content we provide in the library, which is lifestyle-driven, product or industry, we also encourage them to post things authentically that speak about their agency, who they are, what kind of culture do you have, profiles on their staff. So, if Maria is the office manager, what does Maria like to do? So as a client, if I walk in, I meet Maria, I already know she is a dog lover. She loves boating with her family on long weekends, and she loves to spend her time on Pinterest. So it's almost like you get to know someone right away before you even have that face-to-face interaction. And our advisors have said that those styles of posts have been super successful for them to build relationships and engagement. Our advisors are also very heavily committed to community involvement. So they're often running barbecues, sponsorships, events to raise money for the community or charities they're involved in. And they post photos, and that really gives that human side of the business as well. That's really relational, and their audiences love it. And we often share between our corporate channels and what our advisors are doing to give that oomph or that profile.
Outstanding. Thank you so much. Who would have thought that fidget spinners became a important part of your strategy? That's
we didn't. It was hilarious, but it really worked. And this is the content we're looking at now, where do we strategically use our content strategy to inject ourselves into conversations people care about versus us thinking they care about something and us publishing it. And I think that really connects with the outside-in approach that I referenced in the earlier slides.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a treasure and very insightful for all the things that you've shared with us today. Your words and insider strategies have been a great benefit to all of the IMCA members and the others that have signed up for this webinar. So thank you very much. We'll look forward to seeing you on June the 5th for the upcoming the service seminar, and then also at the annual conference in Atlanta, Georgia on the 23rd through the 26th. Thank you very much for attending, and we'll look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you.